Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back to Hydroponics Daily, your go-to podcast for everything soilless cultivation. I'm your host, Dr. Russell Sharp, the founder of Utrema Limited. And today is a short and sweet episode because I've spent 6 hours driving in the car to get to York and then spent a full day at a conference, presenting at a conference on regenerative agriculture. And now I'm back home and I am very, very tired. But I do want to do a podcast, and I do want to do one on an interesting subject, and that is, I was thinking in the car on the way back, what are the most acidic types of crops? And are they grown in acidic conditions if they're grown hydroponically? So there are a number of crops that grow in acidic soils, most famously cranberry. So that in the soil range is the optimum is 4.0 to 5.5, but it grows in acidic bogs normally and famously. But there are other crops. So blueberries, same genus, I think, family, 4.0 to 5.0, 4.0 to 5.0, so even more acidic than cranberry. But there are other ones. So cassava, staple of many developing countries, that's from 4.0 to 6.5, so a big range there. But also both sweet potato and normal potato, fairly acidic. Pineapple, fairly acidic, 4.5 to 5.5. And tea as well, Camellia sinensis, 4.5 to 5.5. So you might think when you put them into hydroponics, you need to mimic these conditions. However, that's not the case. Blueberries are widely grown hydroponically. Places like Morocco, massive blueberry farms, Ukraine, and they're all grown in cocoa or some other inert media, and it's hydroponic feed, but it's often targeted at 5.0 to 5.5. So basically at the lower end of the sweet spot, 5.5 is still there. So slightly higher, you'd say, of their preferred pH, which is 4.0. It's actually, a lot higher because it's a logarithmic scale. So that's interesting. Again, with cranberries, higher than the bog level pH, tea, pineapple, all much higher. And that's because it's the optimum conditions in soil are often a lot lower than in the hydroponic solution, because in soil it's about nutrient availability, but also microbial activity, toxicity of elements like aluminium, and the buffering of organic matter and clays. Whereas in hydroponics, it's about solubility and keeping everything from precipitating out and avoiding any direct damage to the roots. So but the real main reason is that to get all those nutrients available, you would have to create a very bespoke fertilizer that was specific to that crop. And actually, fertilizer companies don't want to do that. And when you can get away perfectly well with a 5.0 to 6.0 hydroponic feed, there's no real need to produce one that's 4.0, because the yields and the health qualities of the blueberries and the cranberries, they're perfectly adequate when they're grown at 5.5. So why would you need to? Only you would need to if you had some sort of water source that was very acidic. But even if you did, you'd probably find other problems with that. Like you would get a lot of heavy metals in the water. So you'd probably want to clean that up and neutralize it and clean up the water. So blueberries, very commonly grown hydroponically. Cranberries, still very much widely wild cultivated. That's hard for me to say. Tea, again, it's grown in soil. There's no major effort to grow it hydroponically. However, my former PhD student, Ridian, he's Welsh, and he is growing different species and different types of tea to make different blends of tea, different species of camellia. I think it's called something Dragon is the name of his new company. So that would be really interesting. Maybe he'll grow them hydroponically. He was an early adopter of hydroponics before even I'd grown plants in hydroponics. Again, pineapple, unless Hawaii has some big issues with the soil beyond what they've got at the moment, they're not going to be grown. And yes, we've grown sweet potatoes in hydroponics, but they don't need really acidic conditions. So there's your answer. That's they're the most acidic loving crops, but they are not grown in extremely acidic. They're the most acid loving crops, should I say, but they're not grown in very acidic hydroponics. When they're grown hydroponically, they're grown in what's still within the sweet spot for hydroponics, 5.5. So there you go. Let's see if that's the case for alkaline-loving plants. In tomorrow's episode, the technical term for an acid-loving plant in gardening is ericaceous, because lots of them are in the erica family, the heather family, or the rhododendron family. But the actual scientific name is calcifuge, which means a refugee from calcium. Whereas tomorrow we're going to talk about the plants that love calcium and love high pH, the calcicoles. Yeah. Until then, thank you very much for listening, and goodbye.